My best friend said she supported my marriage. She's been sleeping with my husband. You're about to hear a story that will fundamentally change how you view friendship and trust. What I'm about to share with you is so twisted and calculated that it sounds like fiction, but every word is true. If you've ever wondered how deep betrayal can run, or if you've ever questioned whether the people closest to you might be hiding dark secrets, then you need to hear this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because this tale of deception goes deeper than anything you can imagine. The woman I called my best friend, the person I trusted with my marriage problems and my deepest fears, wasn't just failing to help me, she was orchestrating my downfall from the inside. What she did to my family while wearing the mask of friendship is so sinister that it will make you reconsider every relationship in your life. They say that friendship is one of life's greatest gifts, and that a true best friend is someone who will always have your back, support your happiness, and protect you from harm. We share our secrets with our best friends, ask for their advice about our relationships, and trust them to be honest with us even when the truth is difficult to hear. But what happens when your best friend isn't protecting your marriage? She's actively destroying it. What happens when the person you've been confiding in about your relationship problems has been using that information to seduce your husband and break up your family? My name is Sarah, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was living a blessed life surrounded by people who genuinely loved me. I thought my best friend Jessica was the most loyal, supportive person in my world, someone who had earned that title through a decade of shared experiences, late-night conversations, and unwavering support through every challenge life had thrown at me. I thought she genuinely cared about my marriage to my husband Mark and actively wanted us to succeed as a couple and thrive as a family. What I discovered shattered every assumption I had about human nature, friendship, and the capacity for evil that can hide behind a smile. When Jessica listened to me pour out my heart about relationship struggles, when she offered carefully crafted advice about how to improve my marriage, when she spent countless hours in our home playing with our daughter and sharing family meals, she wasn't being the supportive friend I believed her to be. She was conducting psychological warfare against my marriage, using every piece of intimate information I shared to systematically destroy my relationship from within while positioning herself to steal my husband. I'm 31 years old, a dental hygienist from Austin, Texas, and I've been married to Mark for 5 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter named Lily who is the center of our world. Mark works as an electrician, and we've built what I thought was a stable, loving family life together. Jessica and I have been best friends since our sophomore year of college, over 10 years of what I believed was authentic friendship built on trust, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being and happiness. Our friendship had weathered every major life transition, college stress, career changes, family drama, romantic heartbreaks, and personal growth. Jessica is a registered nurse who works in the intensive care unit at Austin General Hospital, a demanding job that requires compassion, attention to detail, and the ability to make life-or-death decisions under pressure. I had always admired Jessica's professional competence and her ability to remain calm in crisis situations. She seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to read people, understand their emotional needs, and provide exactly the right support at exactly the right moment. What I didn't realize was that these same skills that made her an excellent nurse also made her a devastatingly effective manipulator when she decided to use them for evil purposes. Jessica had played a central role in my relationship with Mark from the very beginning. She was one of the first people I told when Mark and I started dating in our senior year of college. She was there for every milestone, our first fight, our first "I love you," our decision to move in together, our engagement, our wedding planning stress, and our excitement about starting a family. Jessica had been my maid of honor at our wedding, giving a heartfelt speech about love, loyalty, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who want to see you succeed. She would often join us for dinner, game nights, and family activities, and Mark and I both considered her part of our extended family. "I love seeing you two together," Jessica would often tell me. "You and Mark have such a strong relationship, and it gives me hope that I'll find someone like that someday." I appreciated Jessica's friendship and was glad that she felt comfortable being part of our family life, especially since she was single and didn't have a serious relationship of her own. Over the past 2 years, Mark and I had been navigating some typical but challenging aspects of married life with a young child, not serious foundational problems, but the normal stresses that come with sleepless nights, demanding work schedules, financial pressures of homeownership and childcare, and the challenge of maintaining romantic connection while managing the overwhelming responsibilities of parenting a toddler. Like many couples in our situation, we sometimes felt like we were operating as co-parents and household managers rather than lovers and best friends. Jessica had become my primary confidant during this challenging period, and she seemed genuinely invested in helping me work through these relationship issues and rediscover happiness in my marriage. She would listen patiently as I described feeling emotionally disconnected from Mark, frustrated by his seeming inability to anticipate my needs, or exhausted by the unequal distribution of household labor. Jessica had an uncanny ability to ask exactly the right questions to help me articulate my feelings and seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of relationship dynamics that I found incredibly valuable. Marriage is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but also the most rewarding, Jessica would say when I expressed frustration about communication problems or intimacy issues. The key is remembering that you're on the same team, working toward the same goals. Sometimes you just need to find new ways to reconnect and remember why you chose each other in the first place. Jessica would offer practical advice about date nights, communication strategies, and ways to maintain romance despite the demands of parenting and work. Why don't you and Mark plan a weekend getaway? Jessica might suggest. I'd be happy to watch Lily so you two can have some alone time. I was grateful for Jessica's support and advice, and I felt lucky to have a friend who cared so much about my marriage and family happiness. About 8 months ago, Jessica began what seemed like a natural evolution of our friendship, spending significantly more time at our house and becoming increasingly integrated into our daily family routine. She would often arrive at our house directly after finishing her hospital shifts, still wearing her scrubs and carrying the emotional weight of difficult cases, seeking the comfort and normalcy of family life that her demanding career didn't provide. Jessica would help me prepare dinner while sharing stories about her patients, assist with Lily's bath time and bedtime routine, and settle in for long evenings of conversation, wine, and television with Mark and me. Being here feels like coming home, Jessica would often say, curled up on our couch with a glass of wine after a particularly challenging day at the hospital. You guys have created such a warm, loving environment. Lily is like the daughter I've always wanted, and spending time with your family helps me remember what really matters in life. I was touched by Jessica's obvious affection for our family and grateful for the extra help she provided with childcare and household responsibilities, especially during periods when both Mark and I were working overtime and struggling to balance our professional and personal obligations. Jessica's presence made our home feel more lively and social, and her willingness to help with practical tasks like cooking, cleaning, and childcare felt like a genuine gift from a friend who wanted to support our family's well-being. During this period, Jessica also began developing what appeared to be a deeper, more personal friendship with Mark that extended beyond the polite social interaction typical of a spouse's friend. She would engage him in detailed conversations about his work as an electrician, asking thoughtful questions about his current projects, his career goals, and his frustrations with difficult customers or unreasonable deadlines. Jessica seemed genuinely interested in Mark's professional challenges and would offer encouragement and practical advice that demonstrated real understanding of his industry and his personal work style. Mark is so funny, Jessica would tell me after evenings when the three of us had spent time together. I really enjoy talking to him about his projects and his goals. I was happy that Jessica and Mark got along well, since it made our social time more enjoyable and meant that Jessica felt comfortable in our home. The first thing that made me slightly uncomfortable was when I noticed that Jessica seemed to be paying more attention to her appearance when she came to our house, dressing more attractively and wearing makeup even for casual family dinners. "You look really nice tonight," I would comment when Jessica arrived for dinner looking more dressed up than usual. "I just felt like putting in a little extra effort," she would say. But her increased attention to her appearance seemed unusual for someone who was just coming over for a casual evening with friends. The second red flag came when I noticed that Jessica and Mark had started having private conversations and inside jokes that seemed to exclude me from their interactions. They would make comments to each other that would cause them both to laugh. When I asked what was so funny, they would claim it was something silly that had happened when I was in another room or not paying attention. "You had to be there," Jessica would say, or, "It's just a stupid joke about something Mark said earlier." Jessica and Mark's developing private relationship seemed unusual, but I initially attributed it to the natural result of spending more time together as part of our social group. The third red flag came when Jessica started asking detailed questions about Mark's schedule, his work projects, and his plans in ways that seemed excessive for casual friendship. "What time does Mark usually get home from work?" Jessica might ask, or, "Is Mark working this weekend, or will he be around the house?" When I asked Jessica why she was so interested in Mark's schedule, she would claim that she was trying to plan family activities or coordinate times when she could help with childcare. "I want to make sure I'm not intruding when Mark needs family time," she would say. Her questions seemed more focused on when Mark would be available rather than when he needed privacy. The fourth and most concerning change was in Jessica's advice about my marriage, which gradually shifted from encouraging me to work on my relationship with Mark to suggesting that maybe Mark and I weren't as compatible as I thought. "Are you sure Mark appreciates everything you do for the family?" Jessica would ask when I talked to her about feeling stressed about household responsibilities. "Maybe Mark isn't as committed to making your marriage work as you are, she might suggest when I mentioned feeling disconnected from him. Jessica's advice began to focus more on Mark's supposed shortcomings and less on practical solutions for improving our relationship. You deserve someone who prioritizes you, Jessica would say. If Mark isn't meeting your needs, maybe you should consider whether this marriage is really right for you. I was surprised by Jessica's increasingly negative comments about Mark, especially since she had previously been so supportive of our relationship. The situation came to a head 2 months ago when I decided to surprise Mark at home during my lunch break and discovered something that changed everything. I had been working a half day at the dental office and thought it would be nice to come home early and spend some time with Mark before picking up Lily from daycare. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed that Jessica's car was parked in front of our house, which wasn't unusual since she often stopped by during her days off from the hospital. I entered our house through the front door and called out to let Mark and Jessica know I was home early. "Mark, Jessica, I'm home," I called, but there was no response. I figured they might be in the backyard or upstairs, so I walked through our house looking for them. When I reached our bedroom, I could hear muffled voices and movement that seemed unusual for the middle of the afternoon. I opened our bedroom door and found Mark and Jessica in our bed together, obviously in the middle of sexual activity. Jessica was on top of Mark, and both of them were completely naked and so absorbed in what they were doing that they didn't immediately notice that I had entered the room. I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom, watching my husband and my best friend betray me in the most intimate way possible in the bed where Mark and I slept every night. When Jessica finally noticed me standing there, she screamed and jumped off of Mark, grabbing bed sheets to cover herself. Mark sat up quickly, his face showing shock, guilt, and panic when he realized I had caught them. "Sarah," Jessica said, her voice filled with horror. "I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. What I had witnessed was clear and undeniable. My best friend and my husband had been having an affair in my marital bed. "How long?" was all I could manage to say. Mark and Jessica looked at each other with expressions that made it clear this wasn't a one-time mistake or moment of weakness. "Sarah, we need to talk," Mark said, trying to compose himself and reach for his clothes. "How long?" I repeated, demanding an answer. "About a year," Jessica finally admitted. A year. My best friend had been sleeping with my husband for a year while pretending to support my marriage and offering me advice about how to improve my relationship with him. I turned around and walked out of our bedroom, leaving Mark and Jessica to deal with the consequences of being caught in the most devastating betrayal I could imagine. I sat in our living room for over an hour, trying to process what I had just witnessed and what it meant for my marriage, my friendship, and my entire understanding of the people I trusted most. Jessica and Mark eventually came downstairs, both dressed and looking ashamed and guilty. "Sarah, we're so sorry," Jessica said, sitting across from me on our couch. "We never meant for this to happen." But Jessica and Mark's affair hadn't just happened. It had been going on for a year while Jessica pretended to be my supportive best friend and while Mark pretended to be my loving husband. "You've been lying to me for a year," I said to both of them. "Every time you gave me advice about my marriage, every time you spent time with our family, every time you acted like my friend, you were actually having an affair with my husband." Jessica tried to minimize what had happened and claim that her feelings for Mark had developed gradually without her intending to betray our friendship. "It started as just friendship," Jessica said, "but Mark and I developed feelings for each other that we couldn't control. We tried to fight it, but our connection was too strong." But Jessica's explanation didn't account for the calculated nature of their affair or the fact that she had been systematically undermining my marriage while pretending to support it. Mark admitted that he and Jessica had been having an affair for over a year, meeting at our house during the day when I was at work and Lily was at daycare. "We knew it was wrong," Mark said, "but we fell in love with each other, and we didn't know how to handle the situation." Mark and Jessica's affair hadn't been a momentary lapse in judgment. It had been an ongoing relationship that they had been conducting in our home while I was working to support our family. If you're feeling as betrayed and devastated as I was when I discovered my best friend and husband's affair, you need to hit that subscribe button right now because this story gets even more shocking when I found out how Jessica had been manipulating my marriage from the beginning. What I discovered about the advice she'd been giving me and how she'd been sabotaging my relationship will make you realize that some people are capable of friendship betrayals so calculated that they deserve to lose everything. Ring that notification bell because you won't believe how I exposed both of them and what happened when their affair became public. Over the next several days, Jessica and Mark provided more details about their affair that made the betrayal even more painful and humiliating. Jessica admitted that she had been deliberately giving me bad advice about my marriage in order to create problems between Mark and me and make him more susceptible to her advances. When you told me you were feeling disconnected from Mark, Jessica confessed, I would suggest things that I knew would make him feel criticized or unappreciated, hoping it would drive a wedge between you. Jessica had been using the intimate knowledge of my relationship that I shared with her as my best friend to systematically sabotage my marriage and create opportunities for her affair with Mark. Jessica also revealed that she had been encouraging Mark to feel dissatisfied with our marriage by telling him that I complained about him and didn't appreciate his efforts as a husband and father. I told Mark that you were always criticizing him to me, Jessica admitted, and that you were considering leaving him because you weren't happy in the marriage. Jessica had been lying to both Mark and me, telling each of us that the other was unhappy and considering ending our relationship in order to create the emotional distance that would allow her affair with Mark to develop. Mark admitted that Jessica's manipulation had affected his feelings about our marriage and had made him more receptive to her romantic advances. Jessica made me feel like you didn't really love me or appreciate me, Mark said. When she started showing interest in me, it felt like someone finally understood and valued me. Jessica had been playing psychological games with both of us, exploiting our trust and our marriage challenges to create the conditions for her affair with Mark. The most devastating revelation was that Jessica and Mark had been using information I shared with Jessica about our intimate life to enhance their own physical relationship. Jessica knew things about what you liked and didn't like, Mark admitted shamefully, and she used that information to make our physical relationship more exciting for me. My best friend had been using the private details I shared with her about my marriage to compete with me for my husband's affection and sexual attention. Jessica also admitted that she had been encouraging Mark to ask me for things she knew I wouldn't be comfortable with, in order to create sexual frustration that would drive him to seek satisfaction with her. I would suggest that Mark ask you for things I knew you'd say no to, Jessica confessed, so that he would feel rejected and turn to me for physical comfort. Jessica's manipulation hadn't been limited to emotional sabotage. She had been actively working to undermine our physical relationship and create sexual problems in our marriage. When I confronted Jessica about how she could betray our 10-year friendship and destroy my family while pretending to care about me, she tried to justify her actions by claiming that she and Mark were truly in love. I didn't plan for this to happen, Jessica said, but Mark and I have a real connection that can't be denied. I know it hurts you, but we can't help how we feel about each other. But Jessica's affair with Mark wasn't about love, it was about betrayal, manipulation, and the willingness to destroy her best friend's life for her own selfish desires. I told both Jessica and Mark that I wanted them out of my house immediately and that I never wanted to see either of them again. Mark tried to convince me to consider marriage counseling and working through the affair, claiming that he still loved me and wanted to save our marriage. Sarah, I made a terrible mistake, Mark said, but I love you and Lily, and I want to fix this. Jessica was a mistake that I regret completely. But Mark's affair with Jessica wasn't a mistake. It was a year-long relationship that had involved systematic deception and the betrayal of our marriage vows and our family trust. I filed for divorce the next day and hired a lawyer who specialized in adultery cases and custody disputes. The divorce proceedings revealed additional evidence of Jessica and Mark's affair, including text messages, hotel receipts, and social media communications that showed the extent of their relationship. Text messages between Jessica and Mark showed that they had been planning ways to spend more time together and had been discussing their future as a couple. I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore, Jessica had texted Mark. I want to be with you openly and build a life together. Mark had responded, I know it's complicated with Sarah and Lily, but I think about being with you all the time. We'll figure out how to make this work. Jessica and Mark had been actively planning to end my marriage and build a relationship together, using my trust and friendship to facilitate their affair until they were ready to go public. The investigation also revealed that Jessica and Mark had been having their affair not just in our house, but also in hotel rooms, at Jessica's apartment, and even in Mark's work truck during his lunch breaks. They were conducting their affair everywhere, my lawyer told me. This wasn't just occasional meetings. This was a full relationship that they were maintaining parallel to your marriage. Jessica and Mark had been living as a couple while maintaining the pretense that Jessica was my supportive best friend and Mark was my faithful husband. I was awarded primary custody of Lily due to Mark's adultery and deception, and I received a favorable financial settlement that included our house and the majority of our marital assets. Mark was required to pay substantial child support and was granted limited visitation rights with Lily under supervised conditions until he could demonstrate stability and appropriate judgment. The most satisfying aspect of the divorce was learning that Jessica and Mark's relationship didn't survive the reality of being exposed and having to deal with the consequences of their actions. Once their affair was no longer secret and exciting, and they had to face the social and legal consequences of their betrayal, Jessica and Mark discovered that their relationship couldn't withstand the pressure. Jessica and I realized that our relationship was built on deception and excitement, Mark told me during our divorce proceedings. When we tried to have a normal relationship without the secrecy, we found out we didn't have much in common. Jessica and Mark's affair had been sustained by the thrill of betrayal and the excitement of forbidden romance, but it couldn't survive being held accountable for the damage they had caused to multiple relationships. Jessica lost not only her affair with Mark, but also her reputation in our social circle and her relationships with mutual friends who were horrified by her betrayal of our friendship. "I can't believe Jessica was capable of something like this," our mutual friend Lisa told me. "We all thought she was loyal and trustworthy, but now we question everything we thought we knew about her character." Jessica's betrayal of our friendship affected not just me, but our entire social network, as friends realized that someone they had trusted was capable of systematic deception and manipulation. 3 months later, I've begun rebuilding my life without Mark and Jessica, and I've learned valuable lessons about trust, friendship, and recognizing manipulative behavior. I've also learned that some betrayals are so fundamental that they can't be forgiven or forgotten, and that it's important to protect yourself from people who are capable of using your trust against you. Jessica's betrayal taught me that I need to be more careful about who I confide in and more aware of the warning signs of manipulative behavior in friendships. Mark's affair taught me that I deserve a partner who is capable of honesty and loyalty, and who won't allow other people to manipulate his feelings about our relationship. I'm now focusing on raising Lily and building relationships with people who value honesty and authenticity rather than those who are capable of systematic deception. Sometimes people ask me if I blame myself for not recognizing the signs of Jessica and Mark's affair earlier, or if I should have been more suspicious of their developing friendship. The answer is that while I could have been more aware of certain warning signs, Jessica and Mark are responsible for their choices to betray my trust and destroy our relationships. Jessica made the choice to use our friendship to sabotage my marriage and pursue an affair with my husband. Mark made the choice to allow Jessica to manipulate his feelings and to violate our marriage vows. Both of them are adults who understood that their actions would cause tremendous pain and damage to me and to Lily. They chose their immediate gratification over the well-being of the people who trusted them. I trusted Jessica because I believed that 10 years of friendship meant something, and I trusted Mark because I believed that our marriage vows meant something. The fact that both of them were willing to violate that trust for their own selfish purposes says everything about their character and nothing about my judgment or naivety. I'm grateful that I discovered their affair before they had more time to damage my life and Lily's stability, and before I wasted more years trusting people who were actively working against my happiness. The betrayal was devastating, but it also freed me from relationships with people who were fundamentally dishonest and manipulative. Lily and I are building a new life based on authentic relationships with people who value honesty and loyalty, and we're both happier and more secure without the toxic influences of Jessica and Mark. The experience taught me that true friendship and love require honesty, loyalty, and respect, qualities that neither Jessica nor Mark possessed despite their claims of caring about me. I now understand the difference between people who genuinely support your happiness and people who pretend to support you while actively working to undermine your life. That knowledge, while painful to acquire, has made me stronger and more capable of building healthy relationships with people who deserve my trust and who will protect rather than exploit the vulnerability that comes with love and friendship.